What if the woman who made you believe in love again was secretly preparing your daughter for a predator? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about survival, silence, and the father who refused to let evil win. Grief has its own weather, cold where warmth used to live, and eerily quiet in the corners that once echoed with laughter. I used to believe the worst thing that could ever happen to me had already come and gone, the day my wife boarded that bus and never came home. She died because she chose the seat by the window. One seat. That's all it took to tear my life in half and leave me with a daughter who still checked under her bed for monsters I could no longer promise weren't real. Her name is Arya. She was 6 when the crash happened, too young to understand death, but old enough to notice when her mother's scent faded from the pillows. From that day forward, it was just us, me and this tiny girl with eyes too wise for her age and a heart that beat far too loudly in a quiet house. I didn't date. Not because there weren't chances. There were, but none of them felt right. Because Arya didn't need a replacement. She needed a lighthouse. Someone to stand steady when the world went dark. So I stayed single. So I stayed. Showed up for every scraped knee, every science fair, every question that began with Dad. Is it weird that she grew up beautiful in ways the world rarely sees? Not just pretty, but self-aware, clever, kind. The kind of girl who thanked you for dinner even if it was just frozen pizza, who listened when you talked, and told you you were her best friend, and meant it. Then Veronica arrived. She didn't walk in like a warning. She came like music from another room, soft, nostalgic, the kind of sound that made you pause and smile without knowing why. She laughed at the jokes no one else found funny. She looked at me like I was something worth rediscovering. We dated quietly, carefully. I didn't introduce her to Arya right away. But of course, Arya already knew. "Dad," she said one night, her smile crooked, teasing. "You're the worst secret keeper on earth." When they met, the connection was instant. Not forced, not fragile. Just two souls locking into rhythm like they'd been doing it for years. Arya would lean in to show her memes I didn't understand, songs that made no sense to me, and I watched from the sidelines with something that felt dangerously close to hope. When Veronica moved in, our house changed in small ways. Brighter throw pillows, pink razors on the bathroom sink, girly laughter floating through the hallway. Arya finally had someone to complain to about cramps and school dress codes. For a while I thought, maybe this is healing. Maybe the hole in our lives was being filled. But healing doesn't dress in high heels and red lipstick at 2 a.m. It started slowly, a change I couldn't explain. Arya began dressing older, too old. Her makeup went from playful to theatrical, thick lines and bleeding reds like she was trying to armor herself in adulthood. The first time I saw it, I choked on my greeting. New look I offered, half joking. She didn't answer, just ate dinner with her shoulders squared like she was preparing for battle. Veronica said nothing. Then came the detentions. The $300 lingerie order with her birthday money, the boys who honked from the driveway instead of knocking, lazy cowards hiding behind car horns. "This isn't her," I whispered one night after Arya had gone to bed. Veronica shrugged, flipping a page in her magazine. She's 16. She's exploring. But this wasn't exploration. This was erasure. Someone was rewriting her from the inside out. Then, one night, I heard the door creak. It was 2:04 a.m. Arya. Eyeliner smudged, lips too red, slipped out of the house and into a waiting car. I followed. Slow, quiet. He opened the door for her. Not a boy. Not even close. A man. Late 40s. Maybe older. Polished. Predatory. And when he leaned in to kiss her, my whole world went white. I didn't think. I ran. She screamed my name, tried to stop me. Not because she was afraid of him, but because she didn't understand why I thought this is what you wanted, she cried. "You have Veronica now, you don't need me." And just like that, everything shattered. Because in her voice, I heard the ache of a child who thought she'd been replaced. A daughter who didn't know she was being groomed by the woman I let into our home. That night, after Arya said those words, that I didn't need her anymore, that I had Veronica now, I didn't trust myself to drive her home. My hands were still trembling on the wheel, my vision blurring not from tears, but from something far more dangerous. The ache of a father realizing he may have already lost his daughter long before that car door ever opened. I dropped her off at my mother's house, left her with a kiss on the forehead and a shaky excuse about needing time to cool down. But the truth is, I wasn't cooling down. I was coming undone. When I walked back through the front door, Veronica was already waiting. She wore softness, like armor, a pale robe cinched perfectly at the waist, that easy smile that always seemed to arrive a few seconds before her voice, and arms that opened like a scene she had rehearsed 100 times. She kissed me gently, slowly, like a woman trying to soothe or sedate, and I let her. Because if what I suspected was even half true, I needed her to believe I was still wrapped around her finger. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I sat at the kitchen table long after the coffee turned cold and installed recording apps on every device I had within reach. My phone, an old smartwatch I hadn't worn in over a year, even a burner phone buried in the junk drawer no one touched anymore. Then I called my mother. I told her pieces, not everything, just enough to make her keep Arya a while longer. She didn't ask a single question, didn't gasp, just said, with that stillness only older women carry, keep her here, as long as you need. So that's what I did. For the rest of the week, I played the part of a man in love. Woke up beside the woman who I now believed had poisoned my child, smiled through dinners I could barely swallow, let her trace circles on my wrist as I pretended to drift off next to her each night, all while something inside me began quietly, methodically unraveling. Tuesday over dinner, she asked me when Arya might be coming home, stirring her pasta with a little too much interest. She's still under the weather, I murmured, never looking up. Doctor says it might be mono. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth, then gave a small, practiced frown. Poor thing. She said, I was thinking of taking her shopping. New school clothes, maybe something for spring. I offered a tight smile, tried to keep my voice level. You've helped with her wardrobe before, haven't you? Her expression didn't flicker. She's got so much potential, she said, leaning forward slightly, as if confiding something sacred. With the right outfits, the right posture, the right energy. A girl like Arya can learn to hold a room without even trying. Men do things for women who understand that kind of power. I felt something low and sharp twist inside me. What kind of power, I asked, not blinking. Her voice softened into a whisper, almost reverent, the kind that gets you seen, not like those angry girls who think being loud is strength. Real feminine power, and soft, sweet, dangerous in all the right ways, older, wealthy, easy to control. She was no longer speaking about clothes. That night, I listened to the audio again, played it back in the garage like it was a recording of a crime, which, in a way, it was, but it wasn't enough. So I watched her closer. I noticed how her laptop always seemed to rest on Arya's social media pages. Not mine, not hers, but Arya's. I noticed how she'd pocket her phone every time I walked in, how she deleted entire threads of messages with a flick of her thumb like she'd done it 100 times before. And then Thursday night, I tested a theory. I pretended to fall asleep on the couch after dinner, left the lights dimmed low, my body still, my breathing slow. She waited 10 minutes, then slipped into the bathroom. Fan on, door closed, voice low, but not low enough. No, she's still with her grandmother, she said, her tone light, flirty, disturbingly familiar. I miss you too, baby. A few more weeks. He still has no idea. I felt it in my chest like ice. The next day, I told her I had a dentist appointment and followed her instead. Watched from the car as she drove across town to a storage facility, pulled out a black box from a unit, locked the door behind her, and left with no explanation, no groceries, no errands. When she walked back through the front door later that afternoon, I was already sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work. She smiled, said something about forgetting eggs. She wasn't even trying anymore. Then on Sunday night, I caught it. The second phone. It buzzed across the counter while she was in the bathroom. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did. The name on the screen made my heart stop. My sweet Arya. I followed her, slow and silent, into the kitchen. And from behind the door, I heard the voice that had once comforted me, now slicing through me like a blade. I know he doesn't get it, she whispered. But just trust me. We'll be together soon. I stood there, breathing in something that felt like death. And that night, I didn't close my eyes, because sleep would mean letting go. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, I could never let go again. By Monday morning, I wasn't a man anymore, not in the way I used to be. I was something sharper now, quieter, more deliberate. Whatever softness Veronica had once conjured in me was gone, burned out of my chest and replaced with a kind of cold fire I hadn't known I was capable of carrying. I called my mother, told her everything. Not just the suspicions, but the words, the voice, the second phone, the way Arya's name lit up a screen that was never meant for my eyes. She didn't ask if I was sure, didn't tell me to calm down or to wait for more proof. She only said, voice thin with fury, "Check her phone. I'll handle Arya." Hours passed. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. No words, just screenshots. Hundreds of messages from someone saved as V. Messages filled with compliments so carefully constructed they read like a script. And in a way, they were... Veronica had been grooming Arya slowly, like a gardener tending a seed she didn't plan to keep. She told her I was overprotective, that I didn't understand women, that I was trying to control her. She fed her ideas about independence and beauty, about how her looks wouldn't last forever, about using what she had while the world was still watching. And worst of all, she told her that real men, established men, would treat her better than I ever could. There were links to websites I wouldn't dare repeat aloud, tips for how to pose, phrases to memorize, emojis to use that made you seem younger or older, depending on the buyer's preference. Reading them felt like pressing my palm against a hot stove and leaving it there. That night, I sat across from Veronica at dinner. Pasta again, garlic bread, wine poured just past the halfway point in my glass, as if she knew exactly what dosage kept me quiet. She laughed. She complimented my shirt. I chewed slowly, nodded when appropriate, smiled when necessary, all while my mind replayed every word she had written to my daughter behind my back. After she fell asleep, I found her second phone tucked inside a book sleeve in her nightstand. The lock screen lit up. I entered the 6-digit passcode I'd watched her use once in the reflection of the bathroom mirror. The device opened like a wound. Texts to a man named Marcus. She's almost ready. Worth every penny. Just a few more weeks. And worse. Photos. Some of Arya. Some of other girls. Some blurred faces. Others tagged by name. Men replied with short, disgusting affirmations. Prices. Preferences. Times. And in between all of it, a disturbing familiarity in the way Veronica spoke to these men. As if she'd done this before. Many times. I sent it all to myself. Screenshots, videos, even the file names. Then I slipped the phone back exactly where it had been. No alarms raised. No suspicion stirred. The next day, I met Arya after school. She looked tired, not just physically, but spiritually, like a person coming up for air after weeks underwater. She climbed into the passenger seat without a word. When we pulled into my mom's driveway, I didn't turn off the engine. I know you've been talking to her. I said. Arya crossed her arms, eyes darting toward the window. She listens to me. You don't. She's grooming you. She's helping me. You just want to control everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out my phone and played the audio. Veronica's voice filled the car, sweet, unbothered, dripping with poison. She should use her looks now, before they fade. Find someone who can take care of her. Arya didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead as if trying to hold still long enough to stop time. When she finally turned to face me, her voice was barely a whisper. She told me you didn't need me anymore, that I was in the way, that now that you had her, you could move on. I reached for her hand, gently, like I was touching something broken. You're the only reason I wake up in the morning. She nodded. But the tears were already coming. Not loud, not showy, just slow and devastating. I thought I was smart, she said. I thought I could tell when someone was lying. She's a professional, I replied, and you are still a child. We stayed in that car until the sky turned dark, talking about everything. I told her about the coffee, about the texts, about the files. And that night, we made a plan. She would come home, pretend everything was fine, act like she still trusted Veronica. And while she played her part, I would keep gathering evidence, because this time, I wasn't fighting to be right. I was fighting to save my daughter from the woman who had turned our home into a hunting ground. The day Arya came back home, we made sure everything looked effortless, like life had simply picked up where it left off, like the storm had passed and the sun had casually returned, as if nothing had cracked beneath the surface of our family. Veronica greeted her at the door with open arms and just the right amount of shaky breath in her voice, pulling Arya close like a mother reunited with her long-lost daughter. Her robe was soft, her smile moist with fake tears, and everything about her posture whispered one rehearsed message. You're safe here. Arya played it perfectly. She didn't flinch, didn't overperform. She wrapped her arms around Veronica's waist and rested her head on her shoulder, just long enough to convince her that the bond was still intact, while I stood a few steps behind them, watching this twisted theater unfold in my own home, knowing full well that this time, my daughter wasn't the one being fooled. At dinner, we became a family again, at least on the outside. Veronica served lasagna with her usual flair, poured herself a generous glass of red wine, and offered a toast to new beginnings. Arya giggled at her jokes, nodded at her advice, even asked for help on a school assignment. All while I watched her like a soldier watches the terrain before the ambush. Because what Veronica didn't know, what made this entire performance so powerful, was that Arya was no longer her student. She was the bait. The next few days felt like walking through a burning house with a smile on your face. Arya let Veronica paint her nails, offered to go shopping, and allowed herself to be dressed up and styled like a doll in training. The compliments came quickly. You're glowing. You're blossoming. Boys must be lining up. Every word was laced with something rotten, and every time Arya smiled back, I knew how much strength it took for her to pretend she didn't hear the poison underneath. One afternoon, I came home earlier than planned. The house was quiet, too quiet. I found them in Arya's room, the door slightly ajar. Veronica was holding up a red dress, tight, revealing, with slits that didn't belong on a 16-year-old. I saved this for you, she was saying. I knew your dad would hate it. But you're old enough now to decide how the world sees you? Arya held the dress to her frame, tilted her head toward the mirror, and smiled like she didn't already know the ending to this story. I said nothing. I swallowed everything, because this wasn't the moment to fight. This was the moment to listen. That night, I placed another recorder under Arya's desk. Voice activated. Discreet. We were closing in, and I could feel the pressure tightening around all of us. The following evening, Veronica made her next move. I heard her voice float down the hallway, soft, sugary, seductive. He's very successful, she whispered. Owns a few businesses. Saw your photo and said you're absolutely stunning. Arya hesitated. Her performance brilliant. I don't know. That feels kind of fast. Veronica's reply was a whisper wrapped in promise. You don't have to do anything. Just meet him. Say hello. I'll cover for you. Your dad doesn't need to know. I stood outside the door with my fists clenched so tightly my fingernails dug into my palms. But I didn't walk in. I couldn't. Not yet. Because now, we had her voice on tape. That same night, I tore through the old filing cabinet in our garage, looking for anything I might have missed, and at the very back, behind years of forgotten paperwork, I found a manila folder. Inside were clippings, screenshots, printed emails, and photos. Fathers, daughters. Reports from cities I'd never been to, one in Michigan, another in Ohio, same pattern, same outcome, same woman, different names, different hair, but always the same haunting smile. She'd done this before, many times. The next morning, I handed the entire folder to a private investigator. I didn't need to say much, just asked him to dig. 48 hours later, he called me. Her real name was Vivian Marsh. Her record wasn't short. Identity theft, fraud, solicitation, manipulation. 2 years in a low-security facility, released 3 years ago. And she wasn't acting alone. There was a man, Marcus Webb, late 40s, multiple charges including solicitation of minors. He'd been paroled, had lived in every city she had. He was the buyer. She was the supplier. And my daughter, she was their next target. The moment I heard his name, I knew. He was the man in the Mercedes. The one who had kissed Arya at 2 a.m. while I stood paralyzed on the front lawn, unable to breathe. We had a name, a face, a timeline. And now, we had a deadline. Saturday was circled in red ink on Veronica's private calendar. One word written beside it in careful, feminine script. Delivery. Arya and I met in secret, every night, in the basement, lights off, voices low, like fugitives hiding inside our own home. We rehearsed her words, her tone, her expressions. Everything had to feel real. She would stay close to Veronica, let her believe the grooming had worked. And in the meantime, I kept gathering. Emails, text threads, recordings. We weren't just building a case anymore. We were building a trap. And Veronica, she was walking straight into it. Friday began with a strange calm, the kind that settles just before a storm, when everything in the air feels too still, too quiet, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Veronica stood in the kitchen humming softly while flipping pancakes, a bright scarf tied neatly around her neck and perfume too sweet for that early hour clinging to every corner of the room. She moved like a woman who had finally made peace with something, who no longer needed to pretend she wasn't in control. I was thinking, she said, sliding a plate across the table, her voice almost sing-song. Maybe we should take a trip this weekend, just the three of us. There's a cabin I used to go to, a couple hours north, surrounded by woods, quiet, private. It might be good for us. I stirred my coffee slowly, letting her words hang in the air like fog that wouldn't lift, and gave her the kind of nod you offer someone when you don't yet know if they're trying to save you or bury you. That sounds peaceful, I said, keeping my voice measured, keeping my hands from shaking. That night, I heard her on the phone again. I didn't need to press my ear to the door to know what was being discussed. Her voice, though low, carried the same sharpened edge it always had when she was planning something. He's not as stupid as I thought, she murmured. We'll need to move quicker, tomorrow, before he changes anything. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, body still, breath shallow, listening to the rhythm of her breathing and wondering how many men before me had heard that same rhythm and mistaken it for peace, only to discover, too late, that it was the sound of a predator sleeping beside her prey. In the morning, I played my part. I let the coffee sit untouched in front of me. But when she returned from the bedroom, I acted drowsy, a little foggy, like the brew had finally done its job and dulled my edge. She smiled to herself and kissed the top of my head, whispering, "Tonight's going to be special," like we were two lovers with secrets instead of two enemies quietly circling each other. As soon as she left the house, I slipped out behind her, circled the block, and parked 3 doors down where my investigator was already waiting. A pair of binoculars balanced on the dashboard, his camera prepped and ready. We watched her carry out 3 suitcases, then a box. No explanations. No goodbyes. She didn't think she needed to lie anymore. She thought the end was already written, and we were just reading the final lines. We contacted the police. They moved in on Marcus's known address, but the apartment was already empty. He had vanished without warning, and that single truth unraveled any illusion of safety we had left. My throat tightened. I called Arya's school immediately, verified she was still in class, still protected. I gave the staff strict instructions. No one, not even Veronica, was to come near her. I told them it was an emergency, and for once, I didn't have to explain. When I returned home, Veronica was already back, lounging on the couch like nothing had happened, her hair freshly brushed, her phone tucked into her pocket. "You're home early?" she said, voice light and casual. That coffee hit hard, I muttered, feigning grogginess. She walked over, brushed her hand against my cheek with a kind of rehearsed care, and said I looked tired, that I should rest, that she'd bring soup in bed. I climbed the stairs, shut the door behind me, and called my lawyer. Then I called the investigator. I told them we couldn't wait anymore. The deadline wasn't tomorrow, it was tonight, and she was already moving. I texted Arya one line, "Go to Grace's. Sleep there tonight. Do not come home." At 4:17 p.m., I heard her voice downstairs again, hushed, hurried, pressing. "He's practically unconscious," she said. "Bring the van." That was it. That was the moment. I pressed record on the hidden mic I'd planted days ago, capturing every word with clarity. But something inside me snapped. I couldn't just wait for police to storm in. I had to face her. I had to say it to her face. I walked into the kitchen slowly. She turned around, startled, phone still in hand. "I know everything," I said. Her expression didn't change immediately, not the way I expected it to. But then, slowly, something flickered. Not fear. Contempt. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice still controlled. "Marcus. The texts. The files. Arya. All of it." Her smile faded. Then it returned, but colder. Smaller. "You're confused," she said, stepping toward me. "That coffee must have... I haven't drunk a single drop of it in weeks. Vivian." She went still. The name landed like a hammer. "How long?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Long enough to know who you really are." She dropped the knife she'd been holding, the clang of steel on tile cutting through the silence. "You think you're smarter than the others," she whispered. "But you're not. You're just another broken man trying to save something that doesn't want saving." "You groomed her," I said, the words like fire in my throat. "I prepared her." She snapped. "For a world that eats little girls alive, I gave her power. With Marcus, he's a provider," she said plainly. "He doesn't hurt them. He gives them choices." "How many?" I asked, the air between us suffocating. "How many daughters have you handed over?" She just smiled. And then, the front door creaked open. Heavy footsteps. A shadow fell across the floor. Marcus stepped into the kitchen, his presence immediate and terrifying. "Well," he said, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve, "this got messy." I reached for my phone, but Veronica moved faster, knocking it from my hand. Marcus didn't raise the gun. He didn't need to. He held it like punctuation at the end of a sentence neither of them intended to explain. "Call your daughter," he said. "Tell her to come home." "No, she's coming home," he growled. "Or you'll never see her again. You'll have to kill me first," I said, voice even, heart thundering. "She's at Grace's," Veronica spat. "I've been tracking her. She's not as far as you think." But what they didn't know, what neither of them could have anticipated, was that Arya was sitting on Grace's couch, with Grace's mother beside her, and Grace's mother just so happened to work as a 911 dispatcher. The message had been sent. The call had already gone out, and sirens were already screaming toward us like the judgment they'd never seen coming.